Hey everyone, it's Steve from the garden. In today's video I'm going to do a recap of the 2022 onion growing season, show you how we got started, went through the season, and then the final harvest as I'm getting ready to put the onions into storage. This year I got myself a PropTech 338 tray. That allowed me to drop one seed per cell, and any cell that didn't germinate I just went through and reseeded those with another seed. This enabled me to grow all the onions out, and then at transplant time, I was able to plant each one with a little root ball. Both varieties of onions were started on December 4th, which is a little early, and I think for the coming year, I'll start them on December 20th. I fertilized the onions 3 times while they were in the cell tray, on January 16th, February 5th, and February 26th. On February 5th, I also did a little experiment where I topped 3 rows of each of the onions to see if it would make any difference at planting time. All the onions were transplanted into the garden on March 18th. The candy onions were put on a 6-inch spacing and the Pattersons on a 5-inch spacing. On March 26th, we had a bad cold snap where we had several days where we got down to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 6.6 degrees centigrade. And I had to provide the onions some extra protection using a plastic cover, hoops, and some incandescent Christmas lights. By April 9th, the worst of the cold had passed, but the plants were looking in rough shape. I began my regular fertilizing at this point using alfalfa meal and blood meal. On April 9th, I also did an application of fish fertilizer just to provide a little more immediate boost of nitrogen. By May 11th, the plants had recovered and were starting to grow again, and the weather had warmed up to the point where I could install my drip irrigation. On June 17th, the plants were growing nicely and they were starting to bulb up. On July 2nd, I began to harvest the onions as the tops fell over, and this process continued right up through July 27th. And that brings us to this. These are all the candy onions I harvested this year. They're all trimmed up and ready for storage. These ones over here are the largest. This was the very largest one. It is quite a monster. And even like this one, which is more round than that flattish shape of the largest one. I mean, that is still really quite big. Over here. So overall, a very good harvest. I didn't end up with any that were particularly small. I mean, these are like the smallest ones here, you know, like this. And this one here. And even these are not that bad. These are the Pattersons. Now these don't get quite as big as the candy onions do on average. But even these, I still got some really nice ones. And I didn't get any that were like super small. So here's one of the really large ones here. This one. And this one here. If we compare the largest of the candy onions, which is this one, to the largest of the Patterson onions, you can see that diameter-wise, the candy onions are definitely bigger. But this is a little bit more rounded. And weight-wise, the candy one is still a little bit heavier. But still, this is a very respectable size onion right here. When it comes to storage, what I do is I store them in these like fabric net bags. And I'll start with the largest ones. The largest ones generally will store the longest. So I'll put all the largest ones that I can fit in this bag in here. And then as I go through, I will gradually get to the smallest ones. If you're wondering why I keep all the onions separated, you know, between the candy onions and the Patterson onions, it's because they each have a different storage life potential. The candy onions are rated for about 90 days, although I've had them as long as 6 to 7 months. And the Pattersons are rated for up to 12 months. And I was able to keep some going all the way to the 12-month time period. Now once you start getting to 6 months, you do have to kind of start monitoring the bags a little more closely, looking out for onions that are rotting or starting to grow. And if you come across any that are rotting, you want to get them out of there right away. And if they start to grow, if you're still hard, you can use them as long as you use them like right away. But otherwise, you end up having to toss them out if they get soft. Here's the final look at the onions. They're all put up and hung. These are all the candies here first. And then along the back wall, we get the Pattersons. So that's 1 year's worth of onions. Next year I might try an open pollinated long-term storage onion. So I'd have the potential to save my own seeds from year to year. And if I do that, I'll use that to replace the Patterson onion. But that's a decision for November. I hope you enjoyed my little onion wrap up, got something out of it, and we'll see you on the next one.